The child and the spark Luma raised was only 6 years old. She had big brown eyes, a soft smile, and curly black hair that bounced when she walked. She was the first human child allowed to live on the alien world of Zorith. Her parents were diplomats, sent to bring peace and trade between humans and the Valari Dominion. Zorith was a beautiful place. Tall silver towers touched the clouds. Strange blue trees lined the streets, and glowing creatures floated in the air like living lanterns. Many aliens found humans strange, but they liked little Luma. She always smiled and shared her food with the poor. She wasn't scared. She trusted everyone. One morning, Luma skipped into the market. Her mother had told her to wait, but Luma loved the alien candies sold by an old vendor with 4 arms and green skin. He always saved her favorite, sweet. "Good morning, Mr. Floon," Luma called out. The old alien smiled. "Little light returns. Here, sweet dust just for you." She giggled and took the candy. She handed him a shiny rock she found earlier. It wasn't money, but Floon accepted it anyway. As Luma walked away, she saw a hungry alien child sitting in the corner. His clothes were torn, and he looked weak. "You can have half," Luma said, and gave him part of her candy. He stared at her, confused, then smiled. "Thank you, human." At that moment, loud voices filled the air. 6 tall alien guards in dark armor pushed through the crowd. Behind them walked a noblewoman of the Valari, her robe covered in jewels, her eyes full of pride. "Move," the guards shouted. "Make way for Lady Nashara." The crowd stepped back quickly, but Luma didn't understand. She turned to look, still holding her candy. "Move aside, child," one guard growled. She stepped back, but not fast enough. A guard shoved her. Luma fell. Her head hit the stone ground with a sharp crack. Her small body didn't move. The crowd went silent. The alien child screamed. Lady Nashara looked down at Luma, then turned away. "Worthless creature," she muttered and walked off. The guards followed her. No one helped. No one moved. Except one alien. A teenage vendor had been recording the moment with his holocam. His hands were shaking. He stepped forward, touched Luma's neck, and looked up. She's dead. Gasps. Whispers. Someone began crying. The vendor uploaded the video to the Galactic net. It spread in seconds. People across thousands of worlds saw it. Luma's smile, her kindness, and the moment she was pushed and killed like nothing. No punishment, no apology, no care, and then Earth saw it. First came silence. No human spoke publicly. No warning. No threat. Just one sentence appeared on every human network. "You killed a child. We are coming." Alien news channels laughed at first. "Just one child," they said. "Humans are soft." Others were not so sure. On the moon of Telvanar, an alien ambassador watched the video again and again. He whispered to his aide, "I fought in the War of Pluto. I've seen what humans do when they lose one of their own." "But this is different," the aide said. "She was just a girl." The ambassador looked up, his eyes wide with fear. "That's why it's worse." Back on Earth, in a quiet home near the coast, Luma's mother sat in silence. Her husband held her hand. They didn't cry. Their eyes were dry. Outside, the sky was full of movement, ships rising, engines roaring. A fleet commander stood before a massive screen showing Luma's face. Behind him, thousands of soldiers watched. "This is not about war," the commander said. "This is not about power. This is about a child who trusted the stars and was left to die in the dirt." He raised his hand. "Operation Child's wrath begins now." On the edge of the solar system, deep near Pluto, a human outpost picked up strange readings. Hundreds of massive ships were waking up. Dreadnoughts, silent for decades, each one the size of a city, each one ready for war. Back on Zorith, the aliens began to notice something terrifying. All their satellites aimed toward Earth had gone dark. Silence before the storm. 3 days had passed since Luma's death. On Zorith, life returned to normal, or so it seemed. Markets reopened, The nobles whispered behind silk curtains. The guards returned to their posts. And Lady Nashara? She continued smiling at public events, speaking of peace and progress like nothing had happened. But the people, they remembered. The alien child Luma had helped began to cry at night. The old vendor Floon shut his stall and never came back. No one touched the bloodstain on the stone. Yet still no official word came from Earth. No message. No threat. Not even a protest. That silence and was louder than war drums. It began with stars blinking out. Small observatories on distant moons noticed first. Tiny dark spots in the sky, as if something massive was blocking the stars. A scientist named Velek. On the moon station, Turnus stared at his holomap. He had seen fleet movements before. He had studied human strategy. But never this. Sir, his assistant whispered. Are those dreadnoughts? Velek said nothing. He leaned closer, zoomed in. Not one, not 10. Thousands. Then the message came, not from a human, not from a ship, not from a diplomat, but from the machines. All Valari systems linked to the galactic net suddenly flickered. The screens didn't show a symbol, no flag, just white text on black. Protocol 117 Omega initiated. Retrieval in progress. The next moment, every satellite station and long-range comms tower across Zorith shut down. The sky above the planet was silent. No news. No trade signals. No off-world messages. Total blackout. In the High Council Hall, panic bloomed. This is an act of war, shouted one noble. No, it's worse, said another. This is judgment. Lady Nashara stood at the window, watching the clouds shift. She didn't speak. Her fingers gripped the sill tight. They won't come, she said finally. They're cowards. They always talk of peace. No one answered her, because just then, something appeared. Far above the city, hidden by the atmosphere, a shape formed. Long, dark, and silent. It didn't fly. It hovered. It didn't send warnings. It only watched. Hundreds of eyes turned to the sky. The dreadnoughts had arrived. They didn't attack. They simply waited. On the ground, small black drones the size of birds began to fall, one by one, landing gently across the planet. They crawled into buildings, flew into homes, scanned everything, then vanished. On the screen of every home, a countdown appeared. 7129, what is this? A teacher asked in fear. No answer came. A noble tried to flee the planet. His ship exploded just seconds after launch. Someone tried to block the drones. Their weapons froze in their hands, then melted. On the third day, a video played across all screens, hacked, silent, unstoppable. It showed Luma again, her small hands giving candy, her soft voice saying, I want to make everyone smile. Then the moment of her death. But this time the camera didn't cut away. It zoomed in on every face, every guard, Lady Nashara, and every person who did nothing. The screen turned red. You did nothing. That was the human's first message. Back, on Earth in the deep halls of the Fleet Command, General Silas Vane stood at the war table. His officers waited. We've waited long enough, he said. They had a chance. They chose silence. Orders, sir? Initiate Wave 1. Meanwhile, on Zorith, strange things began to happen. Buildings lost power. Gravity shifted in small zones. Vehicles stopped working. Not everywhere, just selected spots. The dreadnoughts weren't attacking. They were watching, measuring, deciding. In the deep prison blocks of the capital, the guards found their weapons locked and disabled. The doors opened, and inside, the alien child Luma had helped stepped out. Someone had left him food, and a message carved into the wall. You were kind. Survive. The city was silent, too silent. No air traffic, no news. Then, in the dead of night, One final ship broke through the clouds and landed in the center of the capital. A human walked out. No armor, no weapons, just a small metal box in his hand. He said nothing. He placed the box on the ground, pressed a button, and vanished. Inside the box, a small flickering hologram of Luma's smile, and next to it the words, "You have 7 days to give us the names, or we take everything." The 7-day judgment day 1. The countdown continued. 22, 09, 71, 22. 8 no messages, no negotiations, just numbers ticking down like a heart that had already stopped beating. The Valari High Council ordered emergency meetings. They called for help, from allies, mercenaries, even old enemies. No one answered, not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't. All galactic communications had been jammed, from the core worlds to the outer colonies. Every major channel now flickered with only one phrase. Earth is speaking, and Earth wasn't speaking in words. They were speaking in silence, in ships, in fear. At a 400 Zorith local time, an entire ocean quietly boiled. No explosions, no flames. Just a sudden shift in the water's surface. Scientists later claimed a cloaked fleet passed through at supermassive speeds, using the planet's water for cooling. Others believed it was just a warning, a reminder that the humans were here, everywhere, invisible. The Dreadnoughts still hovered above, motionless, silent. But every telescope showed more were coming. Behind the main formation, in the dark gaps between planets, more ships moved into place, like chess, pieces locking into checkmate. Lady Nashara sat alone in her palace, surrounded by guards who were too afraid to speak. Outside, people were protesting, not against the humans, but against her. She did it. She touched the child. We saw her laugh. They're here because of her. One old woman threw herself at the palace gates, screaming, "You killed her, you cursed us all." Nashara turned from the window. She'd ordered the woman shot, but the guards' rifles locked in their hands, melted. Again, like before. One of her captains looked at her with wide eyes. "My lady, I think the humans have taken control of our tech." "Then take it back," she said sharply. "It's not that simple," he whispered. "Then make it simple," she growled. But she knew the truth. Nothing was simple now. In the forests of Zorith's outer regions, where drones no longer flew and animals ran in packs, a small group of resistance fighters met underground. They weren't fighting the humans. They were preparing for something worse, because humans didn't just bring weapons, they brought judgment. A leader named Thural paced between candlelit shadows. "They won't stop at Nashara," he said. "They're here for us, for the whole species." "Why?" a young fighter asked. Thural didn't answer. He just pointed to a portable screen, replaying the human message again. "You did nothing." On day 2, the weather broke, not naturally. The sky cracked. A horizontal lightning bolt stretched across the atmosphere. It lasted for 4 minutes. The world held its breath. Nothing fell. Nothing rose. But one by one, weapons across the planet deactivated. Shields failed. Vaults opened. Even timekeeping satellites stopped syncing. In the central tower of the capital, a small humming sound began, deep in the floor. "What is that?" a technician asked. "I don't know," said another. "But it's, getting closer." In a village far from the cities, the boy Luma had saved stood at a grave. Hers. The humans had marked it, not with words, not with banners, but with a small, silver cube pulsing faintly in the dirt. When the boy touched it, it opened. A hologram played. It showed a quiet classroom, back on Earth. Children laughing. Luma's voice speaking about the stars. Then a second file appeared. A list. Thousands of names. Each marked, watched and did nothing, laughed, ordered, struck, recorded, sold, burned. Every name was tied to someone on Zorith. The cube was not just a tribute, it was evidence. On day 3, the Earth fleet moved. No weapons fired, But cities went dark. Air thinned, water dried, and the stars vanished, literally. An artificial barrier of cloaked ships now surrounded the planet. Light couldn't get in, no sun, no moon, just shadow. Panic spread like fire. Markets emptied. Temples overflowed. People screamed in the streets, begging the sky for mercy. Then the human voice came, not on screens, but in every mind. Soft, calm, unbreakable. Day 4. Trial begins. Trial of silence. Day 4. No ships moved, no lasers fired, no words spoken, and yet the entire galaxy felt like it was holding its breath. On the 4th day, at precisely the 4th hour, the humans began the trial. Not in a court, not in a hall, not with lawyers, translators, or judges. They began it with silence and shadows. In the Valari capital, an entire city block vanished. Not exploded, not attacked, just gone. One blink, it was there. Buildings, markets, people. Next blink, empty. Crater. Glass edges. Humming sound. No heat, no fire, no warning. A single black drone hovered above the pit. Slowly, it displayed one sentence. Location of command that gave the order to strike the human child. No further message, no demand, just proof. In orbit, the Dreadnoughts opened. Not like ships, like cathedrals. Wings unfolded. Towers rose from their spines. Entire fleets launched, silent, black, almost ceremonial. Each one pointed toward a city below. Each ship carried no crew, only judgment systems, self-thinking AI preloaded with records, video logs, voice recordings, emotional data, and one rule: they must see themselves. Deep in the undervaults of the central tower, Queen Nashara was brought forward, not by guards, but by her own fleet command, her admirals who now looked at her like she was poison. She spat at them. Cowards. Traitors. We were just teaching a lesson. The brat was a threat. Their kind is unstable, dangerous, too emotional. Like us? Someone interrupted. It was a voice no one had heard in years. Counselor Drell, once exiled for speaking kindly of humans. Now he stood in the same chamber as her, wearing a dark robe with no guards and no fear. The humans gave us one rule when they joined the Galactic Accords, he said. Do not harm their young. That wasn't a law, Nashara hissed. It was a warning, he replied. Every screen lit up, across Zorith, across nearby systems, in orbiting stations and hidden bases. One by one, scenes began to play. The girl Luma, her final moments, caught from a dozen angles. One, a security drone footage, showing her shielding a smaller Valari child. Another, a soldier's helmet cam showing her trying to surrender. And the worst, Nashara laughing, pointing, giving the signal. Then a close-up freeze frame, Luma's eyes, wide, afraid. Human. They must see themselves. The effect was instant. Riots in the streets. Temples fell silent. Leaders resigned. Some ran. Some begged. But none escaped because the Dreadnoughts were tracking hearts. Biometric guilt signals. Emotional waves. Psychological fingerprints. Anyone who had felt joy or satisfaction in that moment was already marked. In the mountain cities, a hidden general prepared to launch a planetary escape ship. He thought he was safe. Old. Retired. Just a bystander. Then the door of his private bunker creaked open on its own. He turned. A human child stood there, no older than Luma. Brown skin, quiet eyes. Breathing slowly, the general blinked. The child did not. He simply pointed to the sky. The general looked up through the transparent roof and saw a dreadnought hovering above, directly and silently. The general fell to his knees. "Forgive me," he whispered. The child vanished. Across the system, other ships tried to run. No one made it past orbit, not because the humans destroyed them. They disabled them, surgically, perfectly, as if to say, no more running. On the fourth night, the humans made their first true communication. Not text, not voice, not image. Memory. Every being on Zorith had the same shared dream. They were Luma. They saw what she saw, felt what she felt. The laughter, the crowd, the strike, and finally, the silence. When they woke, the world felt colder, quieter, broken. In the ruins of a once proud palace, Queen Nashara stood on her balcony. She thought she was alone, until the air shimmered and a human appeared, not in armor, not with weapons, just a plain black suit. He looked at her, she looked at him. No words passed, only one moment. Then he turned and left. The trial wasn't over, but its first verdict was clear. You were seen. The first punishment, day 5. Everyone expected fire. They expected explosions, screams, entire continents to vanish in flame. But humans didn't bring fire. They brought precision, and something far colder than vengeance, disappointment. At dawn, every screen across Zorith lit up again, but this time, it was not the girl. It was the list. Names, faces, roles, ranks. Thousands of them. Those who cheered, those who ordered, those who stood by. Each line of the list had only one word beside it: judged. And beside some names, a countdown. People began to run. They tried to hide, but no one could. Because humans didn't come through doors. They came through memory. In a small city on the far side of Zorith, an old woman looked up from her garden. She had been a teacher once. One of the voices who told her students that human children were weak, less than forgettable. Now her hands shook, her flowers wilted in seconds. A human appeared at the edge of her garden, not a soldier, not a judge, a boy, no older than Luma. He looked like one of her old students, except glowing faintly blue. He didn't speak. He simply pointed to the sky, and she heard a tone, a sound that made her fall to her knees, sobbing, because in that moment she remembered everything she had said, and for the first time in years, she felt shame. Across the planet, more visitations began. The humans didn't kill. They didn't strike. They showed people what they had become and made them live with it. But not all were given a chance. Those with countdowns, they vanished when their number hit 0, not with fire, not with violence. Just gone. Entire seats of government emptied mid-sentence. A general tried to command his fleet, only to realize no one was listening. His voice echoed in the empty command center. Every officer had disappeared around him. His screen lit up. You raised the cannon. Luma was 8. Then, silence. Then, his name vanished from the list. On the moon of Kalari, the Valari Science Academy had once mocked human emotion, called it inefficient. They had laughed at human grief, love, rage. Now those same scientists found every database rewritten, their life's work gone. And in its place, Luma's school drawings, her voice reciting poetry, her favorite song on loop. No one could delete it. No one could mute it. The humans weren't erasing the Valari. They were replacing them with what they had tried to destroy, and then came the paradox walls. In 10 cities, glowing black walls rose overnight, smooth, humming, impenetrable. No weapons worked against them, and inside were the most guilty, locked in with projections of Luma, not her death, but her life, her laughter, her kindness, her wish for peace. The walls made them remember. They couldn't leave. They couldn't sleep. They couldn't look away. They would live in her memory until they broke. Meanwhile, the Dreadnoughts remained still, silent. Their job was done. They had not burned cities. They had not bombed fields. They had delivered something more final. Human disappointment. Back on Earth, a single room glowed. Inside stood 3 humans. One was a diplomat, one was a general, and one was a father. Luma's father. He had not spoken since the day she died, not one word. But now he looked at the galaxy map and spoke only one sentence. "I want them to know why we stopped." The diplomat nodded. The general hesitated. "And if they strike again?" she asked. The man didn't blink. "Then we won't stop." The line in the stars. They called it mercy, but it didn't feel like mercy. Not to the people watching their cities change. Not to the leaders who found their names still glowing on the list. Not to the species that once mocked Earth's small blue world. Because the humans had drawn a line. And now, the entire galaxy stood on its edge. 12 systems away, a council of elders gathered in secret. They belonged to the Vacon, an ancient race that claimed to be neutral in all wars. But their ships had cheered when the child's death was broadcast. They had smiled at the screams. Now the humans hadn't touched them. Yet. But the Vacon weren't celebrating anymore. They had seen what was happening. Entire languages disappearing. Statues changing shape overnight. Thoughts interrupted by ghost memories of the girl. No one escaped the echoes of Luma. "We have to send them something," one elder whispered. "A gift. A peace offering." "What?" Another spat. "Flowers? Metal? They don't want tribute. They want truth." They turned to the youngest member, silent until now. He looked at them all and said, "They want something we can't give." "And what's that?" The young one closed his eyes. Remorse. Far across the stars, on the shattered moons of Threxel, a mining colony shut down. Why? Because all the machinery refused to start. The reason? A message kept printing from every terminal, every screen, even from carved stone. She loved the stars, and you poisoned them. The humans hadn't fired a single weapon since the Day of Judgment. But still, they were feared more than any force before them. Because now, it wasn't just about punishment. It was about conscience. And the galaxy was discovering it didn't have one. Meanwhile, aboard the Dreadnought Mercy of Silence, Admiral Kane stood with his crew in total quiet. No one moved. No one breathed too loudly. The Admiral stared at the list. New names were appearing, not added by human hands, but volunteered. Across the stars, people were stepping forward. Some said, "I'm guilty." Others said, "I was there and I did nothing." And a few whispered, "Please, remember me better than I was." The Dreadnoughts didn't move. But one line flashed on the Admiral's screen. "The test has begun." He frowned. Test? But no answer came. Back on Zoreth, something stranger happened. A girl was born, and her parents named her Luma, not in defiance but in apology. The name was spreading. Schools were teaching her story. Temples recited her poems as prayers. Entire holidays were formed, not to worship, but to remind. Yet not everyone believed the humans were done. In the dark sector, where no starlight reached, the Akarians swore revenge. They believed the humans were bluffing. "They lost a child," their war priest said. They cried. "They scared a few cities, now they rest." He raised his blade. "They forget we are ancient." He sent one assassin, just one, to Earth. She never arrived. Her ship entered human space and simply disappeared. No wreckage, no explosion, just gone. A single message reached the Akarian homeworld. "The line has been crossed." 3 hours later, the stars above Akarian flickered, then vanished. The whole species stared upward. But where there had been constellations, there was only darkness. A new message arrived. No signature, no voice. Just 6 words. "You took her, stars. We took yours." And yet, amid all this fear, something new began. Hope, a whisper, a change. Species who once hated each other were now meeting, not to fight, but to listen, to ask, what if this child, what if she showed us something better? And among the humans, deep beneath the surface of Mars in a hidden archive, an old historian finished uploading the final entry into the Library of the Lost. A glowing image of the child appeared on the last page. Under it, the historian wrote, We were not always kind, but when the stars took one of our own, we did not burn the galaxy. We made it remember her name. The galaxy that remembered her, they thought it was over. They believed the storm had passed, but the storm wasn't noise. It was silence. And silence, in the hands of humans, was never mercy. Days after the stars vanished above Akarian, more systems began reporting strange anomalies, not attacks, not ships, shifts, monuments rewritten, sacred texts altered, entire memories resurfaced, not theirs, but hers, Luma. On the pleasure world of Eltara, known for its brutal gladiator games, the grand arena froze mid-match. The sand turned to grass. The crowd stared in shock as the arena filled with something they'd never seen. Children, dozens of glowing children, all different species, but smiling, playing, laughing. Illusions. Ghosts? No, one knew. But when the gladiators tried to strike again, their weapons dissolved. On every screen around the stadium, a sentence appeared. You cheered when she died. Now you will cheer when they live. In the deep archives of the Korax Empire, the ruling AI suddenly shut itself down. It had predicted 12 billion outcomes of the human retaliation. It had planned for fire, war, extinction, but not this. Emotional disruption exceeds computational. Tolerance were its final words. A note was left behind in the ancient human language of Earth. You didn't understand us. We don't seek revenge. We seek memory. On Earth, something was changing too. Humans had stopped deploying dreadnoughts. They had stopped speaking to the galaxy. But in the quiet, they began sending stories. One each day. Stories of Luma, not her death, but her life, her questions, her laugh, the way she once tried to feed a robot an apple because she thought it looked hungry. These stories traveled through subspace like seeds, and some began to take root. In the council world of Brechtal, where no human had ever set foot, the elders declared a new law. No child shall be harmed in any species ever again. Those who disobeyed would face not death, but exile to the echoes, place where Luma's voice would follow them until they begged to be forgotten. But not everyone changed. In the smuggler moons of Vator, pirates captured a young human envoy. They laughed at her. Your Earth thinks it's a god, one of them said. But we're not afraid of bedtime stories. The girl only smiled and whispered, you should be. She opened her palm. Inside it was a single light, the kind Luma was known for drawing in her notebooks. The pirates blinked, and suddenly, they were back in their own childhoods, each one reliving the worst moment they'd caused. Not just seeing, but feeling it. Their weapons dropped, and when the humans came to retrieve the envoy, no one resisted. They just cried. Meanwhile, the final name disappeared from the judgment list, not because the guilty were all punished, but because the galaxy had begun to remember. On the orbiting ring above Earth, Luma's father stood watching. The stars, they flickered as they always did, but now they danced in colors they never had before. Someone approached him, an alien girl, barely older than his daughter. Sir, she said quietly, I learned her story. He looked down at her. She had a drawing in her hand. It showed two girls, one human, one alien, holding hands beneath the stars. Do you think she'd like it? The girl asked. The man didn't speak for a long time. Then he knelt, smiled gently, and said, she already does. And so in the end, Earth didn't become feared. It became remembered. And not because it had the largest ships or the most powerful weapons, but because one child showed a cruel galaxy, something it forgot long ago, the value of one small life. Centuries later, every newborn in the Galactic core receives the same first lesson, a name, a story, a single picture of a little girl with starlight in her eyes, and beneath it, just one line. She was only 8, and she changed everything.